typically
Art no problem.
Oh, the moderns are not necessarily are symmetrical.
Balance.
But
there's
always
that's
always bad.
And that way.
Yeah,
Trust me,
syndrome.
when it's you'll notice stand out.
In the way.
Welcome
Welcome to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with a showroom now open in Granger next to C. Kramer Interiors and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We might have Dino coming in soon. That's what the rumor has it.
That's
the rumor.
That's the rumor.
I was in the showroom. When was that?
A couple days ago.
Yeah, a couple days ago. Is
it your first time?
First time. It's magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
It really is unbelievable.
Yep.
The way they mixed all the different floors together in there, it actually looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't look like when you guys were describing that to me, I'm thinking, man, that's going to look like patchwork. It doesn't. They might be on to something. Multiple floor flooring. What would that look like, Chris, if you walked into a house?
Chaotic.
Yes, go over to the stone section. And then it was pretty cool.
Great for a showroom.
Oh, man. Yeah, like if you're wondering what something will look like, you don't really need to wonder.
And the finish techniques and things of that nature on some of the floors that they have.
Yeah, that herringbone, I think it's called. Oh, my goodness.
That's the Rubio finish, isn't it?
I believe so.
Man. I mean, super nice.
Yeah.
Super nice. We talk about, like, the craftsmanship, but this is like next level. Really next level stuff. And then the second floor, I didn't go up there, but it's pretty nice. I don't mean to gush, but it's like,
no, they're an amazing company. They have a fantastic reputation, not just here, but through the Midwest. They're known all over the Midwest.
I could see why. I mean, it's backed up in their showroom. It only took me like 3 years to get
that's
there.
why we use them, right?
Right. Well, it's not just their showroom. It's just, you don't even have to go into their showroom to see the quality of the work that they do if you have them in your home.
Right.
And they do some work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you're seeing pictures, you just don't get it. That looks nice, but it feels like in a picture, well, maybe anybody could do that. It's like, then when you see it in person, you're like, wow, I don't think so.
There's a difference.
Yeah, that's pretty good. At any rate, that was nice. So Dino will be coming in. We'll have to do our homework.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a little bit, but it'll be fun. It'll be cool. Today's show, not about, well, it can be about flooring, but this one, okay, how do I position this? Are there rules of numbering? Hold on. So this is, I've taken like all week to try to figure out how to convey this properly, right? Okay, if you have a wall, is there a rule that says that you have to have odd or even numbers hanging on the wall art?
Are there rules? Yes, typically.
There are rules.
Mm-hmm.
See, I didn't think there would be any rules.
Everything has a rule.
Everything has a rule. Doesn't mean you can break the rules, but then it may not. The brain may perceive it as something's not right, but I can't tell what it is. It's how we perceive balance.
Okay. Does balance necessarily mean even or odd?
Odd numbers.
Odd
Things are done in odd numbers.
Say that again.
Odd numbers.
Because
3s, 5s, 7s, 9s.
Center.
So if you're doing design work and you're accessorizing and things of that nature, things need to be placed in odd numbers versus even numbers.
So, man. So I thought the opposite. Well, first of all, I thought there were no rules. Like, I didn't think.
No, it matters.
I didn't think it mattered.
And it's really hard to convey that because it's how our brain perceives balance and order. So if you're accessorizing something, the rules of if it's done in odd numbers, rules of 3s. So if you put a fourth object down, and it throws off the visual balance.
Joel, did you think that too?
It's the same in his industry.
Yeah, I know.
I knew the rule of odds.
Right, because it's like if he's doing, let's say he's doing architectural molding on the wall, there's proportional, there's things have to be done proportionally or it will be off balance visually. Like if you're doing a chair rail, for example, there's a height guideline for chair rail. If you cut the room in half visually, let's say you just did it halfway up,
It would look wonky.
it looks really odd visually. So you either have to go up higher, 2/3 up to 1/3, or 2/3 down.
Wow. We've been doing this show a long time, and I never really put that together. I really haven't. There's some things that I'm kind of like leading on, but this I had I don't think I ever noticed it. But what you're saying is I've noticed it. It's just not in the forefront of my conscious.
You notice when it's right, and you also know when it's wrong, but you don't know why it's wrong.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I wonder where that is formed. What caveman, what about living in a cave, or what about that? There's got to be a study.
How it evolved to that point.
Yeah, because that seems like primitive, instinctual.
It's no different than when you hang artwork. If you hang it too high, then it's off balance.
So let's get this. We're talking about like what are the rules of numbering of things, right? Okay. And what I'm hearing is odd numbers are more in balance than even, which now that I think about it, it still makes no sense. But because if it's even, you can have like one here, one there. That's even. One and one. That's balanced. So I'm struggling with the 3 being balanced. Is it because there's a focal center if it's 3,
Well, if you have
one in the middle?
Say you have windows, and you're trying to balance those, and you just have 2. It's still broken into thirds off of the windows, oftentimes for the balance.
Nobody understands what you just said, Joe.
I do.
How, if you have 2 windows, is it still thirds? Is it because there's a third in the middle?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So you would balance the spacing based off of thirds,
Right.
Okay.
to get, and that would happen in the layout.
Right.
I'm not coming out here on the job site and saying, oh well, this is how we're gonna balance these 2 windows here, because I can't, we don't have.
It's okay.
That's the planning.
I have this much. Here's my corner of the room. So I'm going to come in 18 inches for the first window. I'm going to come in 18 inches for this between the 2, and then another 18 inches at the end of the second window. So I've got 18 inches window, 18 inches window, 18 inches. So you've got things
Really big
in
windows
third.
are a really short wall.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just using those numbers as an example. But that's how
I
you.
can see Joel calculating that like, well, that's weird.
I know. Man, I don't want to build that house.
Why didn't you just use one big window?
I'm just using those numbers as an example of
Yeah.
thirds, of the thirds. So your wall space is the third.
Right.
And the windows are just placed in that.
That makes. I
If they
understand.
were too close together, then you had this big space on either side. Trust me, you'd be looking at it going, there's something wrong, but I can't figure out what it
too
is.
far apart, or if they were if one was further in than the other, and you'd be like, well, this is
What is
It's a
wrong?
little weird.
wonky.
But we've all seen that because look at the backs of houses in developments. And you get that one bathroom window that's just like
Why?
Yeah.
over in the side there, like, what's that over there? Is that because it's giant
Nothing.
nothings and then this little window?
But it's interesting because, like I said, it's a feeling like, oh, I can't figure out, there's something I don't like about this, but I can't tell you what it is.
Just feels.
And then somebody comes in and does a couple little tweaks, and you're going, oh, that
Right.
was it.
Right. And so if you have one window, you still have to divide it into thirds and put it in the middle?
Well, you have to space that accordingly, depending on what's on the inside of the room.
Inside of the room, well, if you're talking windows, you also have to be careful what's on the outside, at the exterior.
Yeah.
Because you need that balance as well.
Which is what I'm talking about when you look at the backs of some of these homes.
This is why you need a designer
yeah.
to think these things through.
Right.
Otherwise, it can get difficult.
Well, I'm trying to think. When's the last time I saw 4 gables on the outside of a house?
You don't.
You don't really see it.
You see 3.
You see 3. The satisfied smile that Joel had. Did you see that? It was a little... I know what you were thinking. No, I'm just kidding. But
I just love to see the growth, Rob. I love to see the growth.
That's pretty
He's
funny.
kind of sitting over there kind of puzzled. I mean,
Well, because I didn't really think about that at all. Like I kind of, even though talking with you guys like week in and week out, we talked about balance, but never numerically.
Because it's not something that we really ever talk about, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not like we sit down with a client and say, okay, we had to do this in thirds.
Right.
Or, we had to get this proportional. I mean, you just do it.
And it works.
And typically that's not what people are asking about.
No,
they're not. But
if
when
it's
we
wrong,
come back, let me go into where it came from. We're right up against the break, and it was big trouble last week when we had that long one.
Sorry.
So we'll be right back. We're going to talk about the rules of numbers in design and build. We'll be right back.
It's not we really something talk ever about, if that makes like we sit down. I mean, as clients sit down with, okay, we had to do this in thirds,
right?
Or we do it.
Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential. And thank you for listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops. With a showroom now open in Granger right next to C. Kramer Interiors and Hoosier Hardwood Floors. Michiana is trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You could visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We're talking about, I guess, in my mind, we were talking about the numbers behind design and building. Like, what are the rules, And probably many of you already knew that odd was the most balanced form of number. I didn't realize that. I thought it would be even. But, I'm wrong enough that I can take it. But we were just talking about the concept of how you divide space and how you divide, let's say, items. I don't know, like design items, design things like maybe pictures. Well, let's just start there and work forward, okay? If I have one picture to hang, just one, I know it depends, but let's just say you're just in a normal rectangle room with a couch and a TV and maybe a focal point over there, and you have one picture.
That's just sad.
Really. You need
Get
more.
more pictures.
Only one?
Singular picture.
How big is it?
Let's say it's like 4x3. It's it's kind of like a little poster.
48 by 36?
Yes.
Odd size, but that's okay. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
This guy over here. It's a Renoir. Early period. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but you might have two windows. You might have.
Where are you going to hang it? Are you going to put it over the sofa? What's over the sofa?
Well, let's say you have a sofa and nothing's behind it.
You need something behind it.
You need something. You can't just have a sofa and a blank wall behind it.
Well, you
shouldn't.
You could, but you're
allowed to.
You're allowed to. Those are where you bend the rules. I don't want anything above my sofa.
But you're probably a sociopath.
You're probably you probably have issues that everybody else knows about and you don't. No.
Again, that's another visual that if you don't have something above the sofa to anchor it, then it feels incomplete or unfinished. So again, perceived balance, perceived order.
So it's the reason why I'm talking numbers and I'm falling back on that is because when you don't know, like let's say you're just in between something, like you're just in between. Should I put this here or not here?
Uh-huh.
Having some math to fall back on can be helpful. You could start with that and then work forward.
I call them guidelines. There are guidelines that you can follow, but that doesn't mean you have to stick with the guideline, if that makes sense. Like, for example, if you're hanging artwork, guideline, kind of a rule of thumb, is 4 to 6 inches above. Like if you're putting it over a chest or a table, 4 to 6 inches above is
a guideline. Right.
If I'm hanging something over a sofa, I tend to go a little higher, because if you're if you get it too low, you could lean back and hit your head on it. Or some people like to kind of do this, put their head and they're hitting it. Yeah. So I go a little higher, but there's a point where if it gets too high, then it feels off because the portions are not right. That artwork helps to balance that object that it's that's over it.
What's really cool is, though, in the buildings part, the building part, the same kind of things exist, but it's all has to do with structure and span, right? Because some of this was when we were talking about trusses that day, and you were talking about like the spacing, and like this was that's what actually started the conversation that created this thought of numbers are involved.
I figured we were settling an argument between him and his wife.
Yeah.
She was right, but whatever.
Can you say that again louder?
Nope. No, there's a first and last
time. Just one time.
So it's a one-step race that Steve won. But that's kind of where it started, because you were explaining like span and how trusses are different, based on if they're on the outside and inside and all the math. Do you remember we were talking about that, and you were the project that you were on, the spacing was altered because things had to go through the roof, and so you were doubling up trusses and stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's wild. And this is where it came from. You're like, well, they're normally this far apart based on what's going on. Could they be farther apart? Yes, but then this has to happen. And it was just really cool. And it just seemed like, well, that was a way of adapting the math to get the project done so it worked. That's what started this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are rules to put up trusses, right?
Oh, yeah.
And those rules are typically hard and fast.
That's right. So if you have a project where there's a giant space that needs to happen, you have to
engineer it.
That's the word I was looking for. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm putting trusses up, let's just start with the hard and fast. Trusses are typically how far apart? Typically
16 inches to 24 inches.
16 to 24.
Yeah, you don't go 36.
Right.
I mean, no, I'm just saying those are hard and fast.
Right.
It's like you're framing of a wall.
Yeah.
There's standards, and you don't deviate from those standards.
Right, because the math has to do with the engineering, that has to do with the weight and the whatever that structure is supposed to do.
Whereas design, it's a little bit different.
Right. But there's that's the Adam and Eve is that build is kind of like what I'm saying is that relation with the balance is also akin to the math behind structures.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They are related. That makes sense. Right? That 3 is balanced. Well, it's probably because the engineering behind it, the things that make structures strong are based in balance. Right?
Yeah, I mean it's all physics, right? And your mind perceives that,
right? So when you look at like a framed house, like when I go up and look at one, it's kind of amazing, and it's kind of cool that it's a program or system. That's the term you use. Like it's a truss system. It's not a truss doing its job.
Together.
Right. That's where I was going. So it's the same thing when you go into a room. all that's working together.
Right.
It's a different kind of structure, but it's still a structure.
Right.
Well, it makes me think specifically of a bathroom that we worked on together recently, that with the faucets that were chosen and the mirrors, they were framed. We had to go, my electrician wanted me to go to a certain height to make sure we cleared. And then Chris comes in and he's like, we can't go that high. And it did feel like, if you looked at it, it felt high. So we brought it down as far as we could possibly bring it. I mean, like, we're missing those things by...
It should just be a hair.
It is a hair.
Really? So code or whatever's saying, hey,
There's
look,
no code.
No.
It was based off of how things were laying out, from your standard vanity height to the countertop height to the height of the faucets.
Well, the client selected really tall faucets.
Right.
That's not common in a bathroom, so it kind of pushes everything up. And when I saw the framed opening, because these were recessed medicine cabinets and mirrors, and it was like, whoa, this isn't going to work.
Because the faucet would be in front of the mirror?
Well, they did it.
You
framed
can't
it.
go down too low.
Yeah, because you can't open the...
That's what I was...
You
Yeah.
won't be able to open it.
Right.
But it was up so high that if you're standing in front of the mirror, I felt like I'd see this much.
It worked for me.
I was like, whoa, these have this. So I went back. So what I did is I went to Lee Supply, which is where we ordered the faucets from. Actually took a physical measurement, vanity height, to determine how much we could bring that down without interfering with the function of the door of the medicine cabinet.
And it wasn't really that much.
No.
But it was enough that all of a sudden it felt... I mean, like, when I say not much, it was like less than an inch.
Yeah, like not...
Oh, so what I'm hearing is, like, sometimes the engineering part, that math gets in the way of the eyes math.
Correct.
Right. What a work visually.
Because the people that do our plumbing and electrical are like, well, it's uncomfortable if it's any closer than this.
Right.
And I'm like, no.
But then it's uncomfortable otherwise.
Yeah. And
the time to catch it is when it was in the framing stage, so that
Right.
because otherwise, if it's done,
then it's done. Then you're undoing it. Well, we come back. Let's delve into a little bit more of that, where, like, engineering and your eyes sometimes don't see eye to eye. This is Measure Twice. Be right back.
Because the people that do our plumbing are like, well, I just comfortable. It's closer.
and
Right.
I'm like, no.
But then it's uncomfortable.
Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and we're brought to you in part by, you're listening to us on Machinist News Talk 95.3. Almost left that out, but I didn't. But we are brought to you by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with a showroom opening right now right next to C. Kramer Interiors in Granger. And we're brought to you by Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. Talking about the numbers and balance in design and building, and the idea that your room can get out of balance, right? And you don't, what Chris was conveying and Joel were conveying is, like, you just get a feeling, like, you don't walk into a room and be like, wow, there's 4 things on the wall, this is out of balance. Like, that's not what happens. You walk in and you're like, for some reason, it's just not comfortable, or I'm not in balance from being in this room, right? That's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's like, I like my room, but there's just something just kind of doesn't feel right. And
well, when is it okay for something to not be centered? Joel's getting a headache just even thinking about that.
Gosh, I can't even think. It can't. No, is there ever a time when it can't be centered?
It depends on what you're centering.
What is it that sometimes you can't center something, but
It's probably going to be centered on something.
Yeah, on the wall, or is it not? Is it centered with a fireplace?
Well, here's the thing with houses now with like great rooms.
Yeah,
You know, sometimes that room doesn't have an end. Like it's blended into a different room.
yeah.
That is out to me. That kind of lends itself to having to figure out balance, like create where the balance of one room starts and the other stops.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into a room and on the left side, it's kind of the kitchen.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And then the right side,
It's typically kitchen, dining, living.
in 3.
So you've got your kitchen space. Then between the kitchen and the living space, you've got an area for a dining table and chairs, typically. And then your living room is
Okay,
right off
so
the bat.
you go into the living room and there's a couch,
Yeah, sofa.
sofa. I gotta get those terms correct. A sofa,
You better not have a couch in there.
couches. How gauche. But you have a sofa, and there's a picture behind it lined up perfectly.
Maybe you're not. Are you putting it against the wall?
Yeah.
Why? Is there a fireplace?
he's like Perry Mason.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, Chris. I'm making this up as I go along. Well, okay, let's say it's not. Let's say there's a fireplace and the couch is in front of the fireplace.
Yeah, centered.
Centered. Right? Centered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have two sitting chairs on either side,
Or together next to.
That's what I'm saying,
Next
like-
to the sofa.
right, exactly. What if you don't though? What if they're facing each other?
They can do that too.
But they would have to be centered to themselves. Would it be weird if one was closer to the fireplace than the other?
I usually line them up. I usually have them, if they're facing each other, I usually have them literally facing each other.
Is it ever okay to not have that?
Yeah, you can angle one and have one straight on.
Does it mess with the balance if you put something maybe behind them, or like have this seated chair share like a stand or like a end table?
No, they should share. They can share. But typically, like if I'm going to, let's say the sofa's facing the fireplace, and if I'm going to angle a chair next to the sofa, so it's like maybe looking at a TV or
Right.
whatever, I usually do a round table because it helps with the curvature and the angle of the chair is
Right.
softer than putting a square or a rectangle next to it.
Right.
But it just, I mean, it depends on the space. Because if you've got a great room concept and your dining room is already pretty much spoken for, I mean, you're going to put a table and chairs there.
Right. Right.
But then next to that, you could have a pair of chairs that helps divide if the sofa's centered on the fireplace, you could have a pair of chairs that help define the dining space from the living space.
And
In
then
other
you
words,
can center off of that.
and
That's
then-
where I was going.
And then
It's
the
like-
wall across from it that has nothing on it at this point could be a console, a chest, something that will anchor that wall. And then you could put artwork above it, lamps, accessories, create a really nice visual. You could put a sofa table. If the sofa's floating and you've got room, put a sofa table behind it so that you can kind of hide the back of the sofa. So all those things will help kind of balance the space.
Man, that's a good point. Actually, it's not even what we're talking about, but when you have those great rooms and then you do see the backs of a lot of furniture.
Right. And you can soften it with a sofa table, and then that gives you an opportunity to accessorize that. And all those layers, what we call layering, creates a very cohesive and comfortable space.
So on your end, though, you can't imagine a world where, like, there's no out of balance, there's no non-centering in the construction world. But I get so where that question even came from is like, boy, I think it was like 5 years ago. You had mentioned a cantilevered house, right? Where
The house?
yeah, like it was like you could have like one corner of the home without support.
Oh, yeah, you can cantilever, yeah.
To me, that's like, oh, well, that's a different kind of balance.
Yeah. Literally.
like actually different. And I can't imagine that's too common because that seems like
Yeah, it's specific.
a lot for people to wrap their mind around.
Well, and that's done in specific places. Like you're not
Right.
doing that all the time.
Right. But now that
Specific architecture.
Right.
well, since we've been talking about this in my mind, I was thinking, like kitchen islands, they're kind of, getting more elaborate or, just cooler, like more interesting. I can't think of a countertop that would have an even amount of stools. I'm like, wow, that is true. Like you get 3s and 5s.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really
Typically.
get, yeah,
Sometimes you get a 4.
but not typically.
Not typically.
Right.
And usually, what I've noticed is a lot of times
Wild.
I walk into a place and they have 4, only 3 are sitting there, and they find a different spot to set the 4th one. So it's not.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm like, I just never noticed that. I never noticed that odd was actually the balance, but it does make sense. Just trying to think, is that true in like cabinets? Kitchen cabinets?
There's a balance there that you're trying to achieve a balance as well.
In my own house, I'm thinking it's all 3s.
Well,
That has a lot of times that has to do with just the space.
that you're correct that you're working with, and you're not going to go in and do 3-foot cabinets all the way across because that's
Or 3 cabinets.
right.
Right.
They're going to vary in size based on your wall space, but it's how you balance those cabinets.
And how you use them. And
yes,
Yeah, well, it must be just a coincidence.
and there's,
I
but
was like, wait, I'm surrounded by 3s.
no. I mean, again, those are the guidelines, but then again, you have to balance out because there's symmetrical balance and there's asymmetry. So it all kind of like in a kitchen, for example, if you've got limited space, but you've got the refrigerator here and then your bank of cabinets, that would be asymmetrical. Because a lot of times I'm working on a kitchen now where we want symmetry on the ends. So there's
2 refrigerators.
one refrigerator, and then the other one is like a beverage coffee center, but it's all floor to ceiling so that you've got the height on the ends and then lower in the center. So it's all visually balanced.
Right.
That would be the symmetrical side of it.
What's cool is that you're using something different, so it's balanced, but it's not like balanced because you're using the same exact thing over there.
Right.
It's another thing.
The height of the
Right.
cabinetry.
Using the dimensions
Right.
and other things. Like it's not like, if you, like Joel just said, they're putting another refrigerator there. Now we have 2 just because it needs to be balanced. That was like, what was the style that did that? Like they would have a door on this side of the room, but they needed a door on that side of the room to make it totally balanced. So that door didn't go anywhere.
It's called that's called symmetry.
But that's
They wanted it to be symmetrical.
that Georgian or something like that.
Federal, I think, would do that.
'Cause honestly, if you go to Philadelphia Independence Hall, you go to the hall. The one door goes to the chambers where they would argue.
The other one's just nothing.
And the other's just and that was there for 200 years.
For balance.
Just
They did
for
it-
balance.
They
That
did
was
it to give it a symmetry.
Right,
Because Georgians are typically very symmetrical.
right. And that was just balance for the sake of balance.
And symmetry is typically associated with things that are more traditional, a little bit more formal.
Mm-hmm.
Asymmetry is more of a casual.
But well, when we come back, let's just talk about asymmetry because it sounds like the opposite of what we're talking about. So honestly, we'll be right back. This is Measured Twice. Or one goes to the where they would do, and the other there's just that was there for 100 years. 100 years.
To balance. They
That
did
was
it
it.
to give it a symmetry.
Welcome back to Measured Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential. And you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We are brought to you by Leatherman Supply. Everything, windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops. And a showroom now open in Granger, right next to C. Kramer Interiors. and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We're talking about the numbers, the balance. What is the secret? We've learned that construction, all balance and numbers. We're not using the eye to build things. We're using the ruler and the level and that balance is mathematically important in building. Would you say that's accurate, Joe? Like it's mathematically accurate in building. In design, there's math, but there's also eye.
Correct.
Which isn't, you don't measure the eye, what the eye sees. But it's based in math. Like there's some math basis there.
Correct.
And the whole reason why we're talking about this way is because if you're in between, right, you can fall back on some math to help guide you to what what might work. And what Chris was saying earlier is you could start with the math and use it as a guide and then back down, a la that bathroom that had the different size faucets. You start with the math. It's not going to look, I don't know, they're looking at stuff.
It's Chris.
Chippy, Elf on the Shelf.
Chris, a big fan of the Elf on the Shelf.
No, I just think it's fun to see how these creative people are with these things.
Yeah, I know that's going around. I saw it on my social media feed. Like an elf in a sleeping bag. It was like
this one's in ice with a Elsa statue standing there doing this, like she froze him in ice.
That's these people.
I know, right?
Well, you know what's funny is like when you're decorating for the holidays, balance. I don't know if there's any math at all.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah,
it still has to look right.
What?
If you're decorating for the holidays, you'll
know if it's not balanced.
Yeah, you will. Again, it affects everything. I mean, it's in everything that we do daily.
But you were talking about asymmetry, and
yeah, there's symmetry and asymmetry.
So
one's more traditional formal, where everything's completely balanced. Asymmetry is where it's not completely balanced.
But that has its own balance.
It does have its own balance.
See, that's where I'm like, I feel like I'm on like Kung Fu, the TV show. It's like Grasshopper. It's all about the balance and non-balance. If you can remove this Christmas order from my hand before I know. So that's where I kind of get lost then. It's like, so asymmetry has its own balance, even though it's called the opposite of balance. Asymmetry.
Correct. So we're all really familiar with symmetry, where everything is equal. So if you have the same thing on both sides, let's say it's a table or a sofa table, you've got two lamps exactly the same on the ends, and then in the center you might have some accessory, but it's flanked with the same thing on both ends.
Right.
So that's symmetry.
Okay.
And it typically is it's a little bit more formal than asymmetry. Asymmetry is associated with a little bit more casual. So you achieve asymmetry differently.
So let's use the sofa table, two lamp thing in the middle. Are you saying asymmetry can happen there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just have
two different lamps.
You get rid of. No.
I stopped. He was like, "Oh, yeah, heartburn."
No. So asymmetry would be same table.
Okay.
Let's say you have a lamp to the right.
All right.
Piece of art over it. Now you got to create the visual flow, because if you break that visual flow, it won't be balanced. In other words, your eye needs a place to travel. So your sofa table, your eye is following that plane. If there's a lamp or a tall accessory there, it goes up. Your eye goes up, follows the artwork, comes down to the other side. But if there's nothing there, the eye stops. So the balance is broken. So you need something to continue that circular flow.
But in asymmetry, it doesn't have to be a lamp.
It doesn't have to be a lamp.
But it has to be something.
It has to be something. It could be, you could have a set of candlesticks that are on one side, and maybe you have a box or some books in the center, and then you have a smaller accessory on the other side to kind of create that visual flow.
So symmetry would be a lamp, art, box, same lamp.
Correct.
Asymmetry is lamp, art, box, something other than a lamp, but something.
It's just not pairs of everything. together.
Gotcha.
Asymmetry is a little easier than, or symmetry is a little easier than asymmetry sometimes to achieve.
What's cool in architecture for like, there's asymmetry in architecture then too.
Oh, absolutely.
And what's cool about building is that behind that asymmetry is all symmetry.
Yeah.
It's all symmetry, right, Joel? Like, you don't live in a world where there's asymmetry building and symmetry.
Right.
You know, like there's only symmetry. But what's cool is the creative part of your job, though, comes in because you might have asymmetrical architecture. It's all based in sound building, but the look, and that's what's cool.
Yeah.
But when it's finished, you're not going to look at it and go, most people aren't going to look at it and go, oh, that's asymmetry.
Yeah.
They're just going to realize it's
interesting.
It's interesting and it's really good looking. That's nice looking. I love that look.
And it feels right.
And it feels right.
Right. Was there a period of asymmetry in architecture?
You came more into it. Like, things became less symmetrical. After the, I don't know. Because you would have had Georgian. That was very symmetrical.
Craftsman.
Federal. Then you have Greek Revival.
I love that.
So there's different periods of architecture, but there's even some asymmetry in Federal style because the door wasn't necessarily in the center; it was off to the right or to the left.
Right.
So that's a little that's asymmetry.
Right.
So there's always probably been a little bit of that throughout architectural styles, but craftsmen, they're not typically
Art Nouveau, probably.
Art Nouveau. The more modern type of things are not necessarily symmetrical.
But there's balance.
But there's balance.
But there's always balance. That's
there's
like
always balance.
Gotta have that feng shui.
Yes,
and trust
Miyagi
me,
syndrome.
When it's not, you'll notice it. It'll stand out.
Right, in the wrong way.
In the wrong way.
Yeah, like that's the thing. And then in the world of building, asymmetry stands out in the wrong way by the thing falls down or leans or right. I mean,
doesn't operate appropriately.
I'm oversimplifying it, but that's really right. If something's asymmetric,
if it's not working within those parameters,
it's tough.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not. You're doing something down the road.
That
see there you
Rob was talking
Rob's
about.
house.
One picture per wall.
One picture.
That's it. All right, so now you've learned there's no answers.
No, there are lots of answers.
There are. So, but we appreciate you listening. This has been Measure Twice.
Appropriately.
I'm simply but buying it.
Podcasts by Federated Media.